Let's see if I can do this in rap hip hop. I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. If you will now, please join me in the Affirmation of Covenant, which we'll find printed in your order of service, saying, Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Thank you, Rich. And now probably one of the main reasons you're here today, to hear Senator Joyce Elliott. I've known Joyce for a long time, and I'm just so inspired by her, but I'm going to read you some words here that she provided for me. She says, at an age far too early, she became aware of the savage inequalities of life in the South, which played a major role in her becoming a teacher for 30 years, and her knowing by age 10, political service would be a major part of her life. Joyce is a member of the Arkansas Senate, where she focuses on building world-class public education systems, socioeconomic justice, criminal justice reform and equity, and helping create a oneness across the lines of separation among Arkansans and beyond. In December 2021, Joyce launched Get Loud Arkansas, a nonpartisan civic engagement organization whose year-round work is committed to registering, educating, and mobilizing eligible Arkansans to the polls. Senator Elliott could have just used this time in her life to retire and go off into the sunset, but that's not Joyce. She loves Arkansas, and she's going to continue to work for it. Let her tell us about the Get Loud as part of her talk this morning, but I would also encourage you to make a donation to Get Loud. It's important stuff. Okay, Joyce?
Thank you, Debbie. And I need to raise this also. I feel so bad. Well, but just go ahead and do it.
I know you're a teacher, but how about that? You can squeeze that. Is that about right, you think? You could adjust.
Yeah, that'll work. But especially that last part she said, y'all. That's the part that is hard to say. Y'all, please make a contribution. So thank you, Debbie. I'm just like Jay. We were talking about what a great, open, wonderful, light place this is. And after the kind of short week we've had, supposedly, but it felt like it was 3 years, it's nice to be somewhere that feels the way this place does. And I've been here a number of times, and it's always great to return. I feel as if the things that keep pushing me are something called my ancestors, the folks who were there when I was a little kid, eavesdropping on what everybody had to say. I was an incessant, relentless eavesdropper. And my mother would always say it's just because I was nosy, but I would say, but isn't there such a thing as good nosy? And she would say nope before I could finish asking that question. But as Debbie said in the introduction, I did recognize, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure it had anything at all to do with me personally, because it's not that I was brilliant, but I could see and I could feel. But I have known way too long that there was just this inequity that didn't make sense. And the thing that really set me off was I could almost do a roll call of all of the people when I was hanging out by the shade tree, because that's where so much went on. There was not air conditioning, but the shade tree was magical in that I knew if somebody wanted, it was usually men, and I would just always volunteer. Would somebody like to have some water? And I would very slowly pour that water so I could hear what was going on. And they were always talking about voting, or they were always talking something about civic responsibility. But the downside of that was that they were not allowed to participate in that which they had such this onerous feeling of, I need to do this, but I can't do it. I have pledged allegiance to the flag. I have looked at all the documents and been taught all the documents, the founding documents of this country, and still I'm not able to engage. And that's where I feel those voices still talking to me to this day. So with all of these voices in my head, and this thing about you just can't let them down, and then recognizing after all this time, when we passed the civil rights laws and we passed the Voting Rights Act, still we are in a country, but in a state, more importantly in this context, where we don't have people voting. Arkansas just ranks at the bottom in civic engagement. So in 2021, I thought, well, I'm going to be coming to the end of what I'm going to be doing in the legislature, so I'm going to get started right now doing something about that thing that they still occupy too much time in my head about doing something. So on a very cold morning, where the videographer and I had decided to record the launch video, it was so cold. And I had decided, I thought smartly, that we're going to do this down by the river because I didn't want it to just look like Little Rock. I wanted trees, because I wanted everybody in the state to feel like this was about them. It was so cold. I wore a very, very heavy coat that I normally never have to wear, with a scarf and everything. And there we are by the water, and my teeth were almost chattering. But we didn't have another time we could do it. This was a person who works for the Little Rock School District who had agreed to meet me at 7 o'clock in the morning and do this as a contribution. So I thought, at least I have to do justice for him. He's made this big sacrifice. But 1st of December, we recorded it, launched a few days later. And the whole idea behind Get Loud Arkansas, and yes, the name of the organization is on purpose, because one thing we cannot do and think we're going to change things by being quiet. We ought to know that by now. So it's an invitation to Arkansas to get loud about civic engagement. And civic engagement is about more than just being registered to vote. Because if it were just registered to vote, we could do a whole lot real quickly. But our mission is to, yes, get people registered. And if you are not registering them and following up with them, give us their names and we will follow up with them. Because the follow-up after registration is to get them educated about people and about issues, to make sure we get them mobilized and all the way to the polls as educated voters. And that's a lot. It is hard because once you get somebody registered and you've got to go back with them, and they are not voters to start with. But one of the things we know is that people don't engage for two really big reasons. One, they think it's not worth it. And what does it mean? It makes no difference. And second, they are afraid of being embarrassed because they don't know how to do what every one of us in this room most likely just take for granted. For example, if I were to ask you to raise your hand, well, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to raise your hand. This is a friendly group. If you have ever made a statement along the line of, I just don't understand why people don't vote. We worked hard for this. You ever made a statement or heard somebody make a statement like that? Anybody in this room ever made a statement? I can't imagine not voting. I've been voting since I was a kid, and my parents would take me to the polls with them so I would know what's going on. Is that you or somebody that you know? And don't you say it with a little bit, you don't have to answer this part, but don't you say it sometimes with a little bit of condescension and what is wrong with those people kind of feeling inside you? Because it's something so important, who in the world would not do it? You're not answering that question now out loud, but every time we say it out loud to people like my ancestors that are in my head, every time we say something like that out loud, that's exactly the way they feel, condescended to, disrespected. You are so much better than I am, I guess, that you get to go vote, and to me it means nothing. And I can't even have a conversation with you about it because you've already made me feel as if I am somebody not worthy of the conversation because I don't vote. And that's something we have to change. And we say things to people, especially in my culture, we're big on this in my culture. If our ancestors have bled and died for this, why aren't you voting? If that worked, guess what? Everybody in the whole freaking world would be voting. But don't we know enough to know it's not working? But it makes us feel good to teach people their history that obviously you don't know or that you don't respect. These are the kind of things that Get Loud is committed to putting behind us and put the onus on us to engage and reach out to and make people feel disrespected and that I'm not better off. I need you to vote as well as I need, for me, as well as I need you to vote for yourself. But getting to the part about voting for yourself is what's really hard. Because if we start preaching to people, which is what we tend to do, you need to vote because this, whatever your this is. Well, the thing we have figured out now, it's a lot better to say when I show up to talk to a group of people who are not voters. And by the way, that's primarily young people. It's primarily people of color, indigenous people, and African Americans, or in this case, black, as we tend to say. That's the group. These are the groups that tend not to be voters. And so when we show up and talk with them, a good way to start is, if you could change something, what would you change? And that way they're talking about themselves. And now I have a connection to talk to them about how voting can be a part of what they want and what matters to them. That takes a lot of patience. It's a good thing I was a teacher because I do have the patience of Job. So I can stay there all evening or night if I need to. So we have hired, as many as we could hire. Some of you made contributions to us that we've been able to hire an engagement director, and I get a nominal salary for what I do. Believe me, it's nominal, because we just started. But it was more important to pay somebody a decent salary, a really good decent salary, to be the engagement director who can work at this full time. And we've hired 3 young organizers, community engagement folks, as we call them, and they reflect as much as we can at this point, the people we want to appeal to. This is a whole different situation. For some reason, young people haven't figured out I'm as old as I am because I show up and they think I'm not, getting Social Security, but I am. And I think it's having been a teacher that has just left in me respect what young people have to say, because I had to do that in the classroom. So all of that is wrapped up into trying to answer and respond to the issues we have of people not voting. And I'm going to give you some stats here in just a minute so you'll know how grave this is. In your heart of hearts, you know it's bad. In your heart of hearts, when you read that Arkansas at the bottom, it's bad, and what we are trying to do with it, about it, and how you can engage with us. But I know that we are not going to be able to change this, what we say overnight, but we can make a big change. And I need you to understand right up front, yes, indeed, we did We did pattern this after what they did in Georgia. But here's the good news. We're not Georgia. We're maybe Atlanta. We're much smaller. So we can, while my commitment to this is 10 years, I don't think it's going to take that for us to make the change they had to make in Georgia. It was a 10 to 13 year period, but depending on what part of the state you were in. And people talk about it like, oh, Stacey Abrams did it. Yeah, Stacey Abrams led that outfit. But you need to know, it was people like the ones in this church that were a part of making that happen. One person didn't do it, but it's easy to say that. Here are some numbers you need to know. So in 2018, between 2018 and 2020, 10,362, I'm sure these numbers are a little bit different now for where we are in this period, but these are the ones we could depend on because we can look back at them and be for sure. 10,362 voters registered at events. At events. So when you see a Get Loud event happening somewhere, don't say, well, I'm not going, I'm registered. Don't do that, because it's not about you at this point. Bring some people to this event so we can get them registered. For example, we're going to be at Chico Elementary School on the 18th, next Thursday of next week. We're going to be there, and we're going to be there with folks who speak Spanish and English and have registration forms in Spanish and in English to make sure that that's an event where they can show up. That's going to be easy for people. They're bringing their children, and they can do something else while they're there, like get registered. Send people that way. And 131,967 new voters registered at the DMV. That's more than I thought. And so what we do for voters like this and others, we have a really good relationship, I call it good anyway, so far it has been, with the Secretary of State. These registrations go to the Secretary of State. We go to the Secretary of State and get a list of everybody who has just registered or registered within a month's time. And we immediately get in contact with them. And we work out a way to remain in contact with them because, remember, they're registered. They're not voting. That's the issue. 1/3 of the folks who are registered to vote in this state are not voting. So we have to go find them, build a relationship with them, and get them to the polls. And because we can't get to everybody, and we know that, we have targeted certain counties, and as a 501(c), because that's what we are, we're nonpartisan. I can't just run out and vote with Republicans and go, y'all, I'm going to vote with y'all to get people registered. Can't do it with the Democrats either. And that's not my point, because I have complete faith that if people get registered and they're educated, they will do the right thing for themselves, I think, which will accrue to the goodness for everybody. I believe that. They just aren't there. So these folks are registering at the DMV, and so many of them who are young people. Now, 397,000 people who are at voting age for registering are not registered. That's enough people who are registered but not voting, and people who are not registered at all to change anything in this state that we want to change. That's enough people that we should respect enough, no matter what I feel, no matter how I'm tired of these folks talking in my ear or you doing your part. That's enough people for us to concentrate on. And so many of them, like the counties that we have targeted, are in those counties. I don't ever call out those counties' names because I'm not here to embarrass anybody. But they know, we know who they are because we're engaged with them. Now, this number, 5 counties have more than 25 of registered voters listed as inactive. 5 counties, more than 25% as inactive. Well, you could guess some of those counties are part of the folks that we are targeting. And we can target by precinct, we can target by counties, and so otherwise we can target by regions and geography, in other words. But if we can get folks mobilized just by 15% in those counties, we can change a great deal. And there are other counties we're working with to be sure we make a footprint. They're not the target, but we want to make a footprint there because Get Loud Arkansas is not a seasonal enterprise. We will be working year-round because people rightfully get tired of us running up in their face when it's time to vote. And if it's civic engagement, doesn't civic engagement happen all the time? That's what we want people to get from Get Loud Arkansas. That's what we're working for. And less than 30% of voting age folks in counties, one in Northwest Arkansas, the other in the Delta, and the other two in South Arkansas and Southwest Arkansas. Now, those are some counties that are not in the ones I mentioned earlier because we're concentrating on them. But 30% of the voters in those counties, less than 30% of the folks there are even registered as well. So it's pretty clear what we have to do. And the other things that we have to work on, voter suppression, because I know we're going to get to the end here real quickly, Debbie, don't panic. Voter suppression is a big deal. I mean, I was a part of a legislature. I've said it on the floor of the legislature, so I'm not saying anything new here. The bills we passed in the name of voter integrity are nothing more than rank voter suppression bills. Because every time those bills came up, the question I always ask, and other people had questions as well, will you please demonstrate to us why we need this bill? What is the issue? Give me the examples. Then we have something to talk about. But we never, for example, we never got an answer to the question, why do we have to have the law changed on voter ID? Now, that was not last session. That was like 2 sessions before. And nobody ever had a single response to that in terms of a defense. What is not working right now? But common sense tells you that if you want to suppress votes, you don't have to say, hey, y'all, I'm passing a bill that's all about voter suppression. That's not the way it works. But we do things that the outcome is voter suppression. Now, and that's all I'm going to say about that, because this is not to be too political, but I'm saying this not as a partisan. I'm saying this because I'm a person who cares about it, and I saw it happen in the legislature. I was part of asking the questions, and nothing changed. Folks are so outraged that we're at the bottom of civic engagement in our state, but what we do is nothing about making sure that changes that we should do. For example, like, wouldn't it be great if on the day of the election that were a holiday? Wouldn't it be great if you could register at the polls, on the day of the election? Like, I lived 1 year in Minnesota, and when I was talking about, well, where do I go to register, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, woo. And they said, well, you don't have to go anywhere. You just do it the day you vote. I did not believe that for a second. I did not believe that. Like, do you know what you're saying? Are you sure? And I kept asking other people. And sure enough, I said, well, okay, everybody's not lying. So I decide my, intrepid stuff, I'm just going to wait until the day of the election. And sure enough, y'all, within 10 minutes, I had voted. I just could not believe that. That was 1983. 1983. And so we should be making it easier because we forget about, for example, people literally sometimes don't have time to vote. We continue to say that we are a red state. That's just out in the ether. This is not Joyce Elliott just saying this for political purposes. But here's the problem with all that we know about who's not voting. How do you really know it's a red state other than people who are not voting, and we don't know how they would vote? We should be really careful with that message. We are a red state to the extent that there are so few people who are participating in our state. Who knows what it would be if we had actual civic engagement? It might still be, quote unquote, red. I don't know. That's not my function. My function is for there to be some balance so everybody has an opportunity to be engaged and go vote, and they can vote as a person who is educated. The other problem that we have right now that Get Loud is working on is voter purging. Now, the federal government passed a law when it was the Help America Vote Act to require states to do this, so that when you get the voter rolls, the thought behind it, it would be clean and it would be a good one. And the thought behind it was, I like to think it was something good, and maybe it is. Because when you get a list, if you're trying to do the work, it's good if it's a good list. But the thing of it is, people don't know they're purged. And they will show up to vote and not know they're purged. So that's the other thing we've taken up. I've asked the Secretary of State for a list of folks who've been purged, and we have it. Right now, there are 100,000 people on that list. And many of them don't know they're on that list. So on our website, getloudarkansas.org, you can go there and find all kind of things you can do, like contributions and everything. At that website, we have put all kind of information there that you can get to use with other people. We tried to put it all in one place. You can check your voter registration. And if you are not registered, it tells you the steps to take to be sure you're registered. But we're going to have volunteers to contact all those people who are purged and go like, are you still here? What is the deal? But if we don't do that, that's 100,000 people that can make such a big difference in a small place like Arkansas. Even if we just get 15% of them, it matters. It really matters. And so in this 10-year plan, we are thinking at least, in this 10-year plan, we could have changed the state in ways, not red to blue, it's not the issue, but in ways that folks can have their voices heard who have never had their voices heard before. And other people will re-engage and understand why people are not voting and what we can do. If you don't want to do that work with helping them, just send them our way, please. That's our function. We're going to have to hire more people down the road. There's no doubt about it. But we're going to concentrate on these 8 counties we have right now and make a footprint in others to make sure we can keep getting this work done. I am daunted by this work. I would feel much better and at ease if we had just said we're going to register voters. But that is a small part of the point. We have to do this other hard, dirty work. And, I guess the other thing I want you to know is there is hope here. I need us to stop being so downhearted about it. And I just need us to be more optimistic of the possibilities in Arkansas, because there is reason to be optimistic. And part of it starts with our not being so pessimistic. I'm not trying to steal your pessimism away from you. I'm just trying to balance it some with some optimism. Because if we don't, I don't have the nerve to look in the face of young people and say, I'm just checking out because nothing. I don't even have the nerve to do that. Because somebody made sure, for me, they didn't check out. Those men, as much as I wondered why women were not under that tree, those men were there for me. And everybody else who participated in everything it took for me to be civically engaged. And lastly, civic engagement is something, we ought to be teaching in our schools. It should be a big thing there. That's true. It's not what it should be, but it can be if you get involved with legislators and demand it. It should not fall onto people at random in our communities to teach civic engagement, although it's a very good thing. That should be an add-on. But for me, I tried to get a bill passed at one point that would pre-register 16-year-olds. That made sense. And then change civics not to, from the 9th grade to the 11th grade, because there is a merging there where it makes sense. I'm going to get registered at 16. Oh, I'm taking civics. This all matters. It matters how we go about it. So I have hope because, as I read one time, is I don't have enough privilege to give up hope. I don't have enough privilege to not be optimistic. I just don't have it. Because if I sit down and I decide, well, I'm checking out because it doesn't matter, I think I will hear rattlings from the grave, and I should. Every one of us should, actually. So that's what Get Loud Arkansas is. A lot more stuff here, but of course I knew I couldn't do it all. But I just want you to know there are other people out there working as well. But I'm asking them the same thing. If you're not going to follow up with them, give us their names. Because if all of us get together and get loud, yeah, we'll see some stuff that's different. I promise you. Get loud with me. All righty. Thank you. Thank y'all.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace and have a wonderful week. Thank you.